The containment field collapsed at the worst possible moment. Kale's hand shot forward instinctively as the alien princess crumpled, her luminescent skin fading from sapphire to ash. Her bodyguard screamed in a language that pierced his skull. But his fingers were already touching her wrist. And then, everything changed. Heat surged through his arm like molten steel. The princess gasped, her eyes snapping open, pupils dilating, until they swallowed the violet irises whole. Her chest heaved once, twice, and color flooded back into her face like dawn breaking over a frozen world. The guards froze mid-lunge, their energy weapons humming with lethal intent but not firing. Kale tried to pull away but couldn't. His hand felt welded to her skin, and something was flowing between them. Something that tasted like copper and starlight and ancient rage. The princess's lips moved, forming words in a voice that shouldn't have been possible from someone moments from death. "Human," she whispered, and the word carried contempt and wonder in equal measure. "You're killing yourself to save me. Well, send. You're killing yourself." He hadn't known that. Hadn't known that the burning in his veins was his own life force pouring into her dying body. Hadn't known that the treaty negotiations he'd been sent to facilitate were a trap designed to end her bloodline. But now he knew, because her mind was touching his, and in the space between heartbeats, she downloaded a century of conspiracy into his consciousness. The Ascendancy Council wanted her dead. Her own people, the ones who'd sent him here as an unwitting assassin, had poisoned the diplomatic gift he'd presented. The wine he'd offered her with trembling hands and carefully rehearsed words of peace had contained a neurotoxin engineered specifically for her genetic markers. It was killing her slowly enough for her guards to blame him, quickly enough that no antidote would arrive in time. Except now his human biology was filtering the poison through his own system, and somehow, impossibly, neutralizing it. His cells were dying by the millions, sacrificing themselves to metabolize alien toxins that should have been instantly fatal to him. But something else was happening too. Something the conspiracy hadn't accounted for. The princess's healing factor was activating. Her people could regenerate from near-fatal wounds. Given time and energy, his touch was providing both, and as the poison left her system, ancient defensive mechanisms awakened. Her skin began to glow again, not with the soft bioluminescence of health, but with fierce combat radiance that made the guards shield their eyes. "Stop," Kale managed, though his vision was darkening at the edges. "You're taking too much." "I'm taking what you're giving," she said, and there was something like grief in her mental voice. "And you won't stop giving until you're dead. Will you? Stupid human. Noble. Foolish. Stupid human." The throne room erupted into chaos. Someone fired an energy weapon, and it splashed harmlessly against a shield the princess erected with a gesture. She was sitting up now, one hand still locked with his, the other raised toward her guards, who were scrambling to understand what they were witnessing. "Stand down," she commanded, and her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "The human is innocent. The poison came from within our own court." More shouts. Denial. Outrage. Demands for proof. The princess's grip tightened on Kale's hand, and she pulled him closer with surprising strength. Her face was inches from his now, and he could see the calculations happening behind those two large eyes. He could feel her mind sorting through the conspiracy's web, faster than any computer. "They're here," she said softly. "The traitors. In this room. Among my own guards." Kale's heart stuttered. His knees buckled, but she caught him. And now both her hands were on him, one on his wrist, and one braced against his chest. The energy flow reversed suddenly, violently. Instead of draining him, she was pouring power back, but it was raw and uncontrolled, and his human nervous system wasn't built to channel it. He screamed. Couldn't help it. It felt like lightning was replacing his blood, like his bones were turning to light. The princess's eyes widened in what might have been alarm or fascination, and she eased the flow, but didn't stop it. "I'm sorry," she said, and meant it, "but you need to survive the next 60 seconds. And this is the only way." 30 seconds. That's how long it took for the first traitor to reveal himself. A guard captain, positioned closest to the throne, raised his weapon, not at KL, but at the princess's back. The shot would have been instantly fatal. Would have been, if Kale's supercharged reflexes hadn't made him shove her aside with inhuman speed. The energy bolt caught him in the shoulder instead. Pain like he'd never imagined exploded through his body. But it was distant somehow, filtered through the alien power coursing through him. He didn't fall. Should have, but didn't. The princess moved like liquid death. One moment she was behind him. The next, she had the captain's throat in her hand, lifting him off the ground with strength that seemed impossible for her slender frame. Her skin blazed so bright, Kale had to look away. And when he looked back, the captain was on the floor, unconscious or dead. He couldn't tell which. 3 more, the princess said calmly, as if she hadn't just nearly killed one of her own guards. "Show yourselves, or I hunt you." Silence. Then, movement. Fast and coordinated. 3 guards from different positions in the room, all firing simultaneously at the throne. Not at the princess, at the throne itself. Kale's enhanced perception caught what his normal senses would have missed. They were destroying the throne's built-in safety systems, the emergency stasis field that could protect the royal bloodline in case of attack. They weren't trying to kill her in the chaos. They were eliminating her last line of defense for an attack yet to come. The princess understood a heartbeat before Kale did. Her hand found his again, and she yanked him toward the throne's dais just as the floor beneath them exploded. Not metaphorically. Actually exploded. Shaped charges that had been planted before the diplomatic meeting, timed to detonate during the chaos. They fell together into darkness, into depths beneath the palace that Kale hadn't known existed. The princess's body wrapped around his, her shield enveloping them both as they plummeted through collapsing architecture and detonating secondary charges. Someone had planned this meticulously, had known she would survive the poison, had anticipated her moves, had prepared contingencies upon contingencies. They hit water, cold and shocking. The princess's shield flickered, failed, came back. They were in some kind of underground reservoir. Maintenance tunnels, maybe. And the explosions had sealed the exit behind them. Kale's lungs burned. The alien energy in his system was fading, used up by the violence of their fall and the shield's desperate protection. The princess's face was barely visible in the dim bioluminescence that survived underwater. She was mouthing something, and Kale realized with dull horror that she was apologizing. Apologizing because she'd saved his life only to drag him down here to drown in the dark beneath an alien palace. Because the conspiracy ran deeper than either of them had known. Because she'd trusted the wrong people, and now they were both going to die for it. But Kale was human. And humans were very, very good at one particular thing that most species hadn't needed to evolve. Humans could hold their breath for an absurdly long time when survival demanded it, could ignore the screaming of oxygen-starved cells, could push through the panic, could keep thinking when thinking seemed impossible. He grabbed the princess and kicked hard, picking a direction at random in the flooded darkness. Her eyes went wide, because she was drowning, because her species breathed more frequently than his, and the water had caught her mid-breath. He could feel her trying to shield herself, trying to create an air pocket. But she was too weak, too drained from healing, from the fighting, from the fall. So Kale did the only thing he could think of. He pressed his mouth to hers and gave her his air. Not a kiss, not really. Just a transfer of oxygen from his lungs to hers. But it shocked her enough that she stopped thrashing. Enough that she understood what he was trying to do. They surfaced in a maintenance shaft, gasping and coughing. The princess's skin had gone dark, almost black. her body's stress response to near death by drowning. Kale hauled them both onto a narrow metal walkway and collapsed, his muscles shaking with exhaustion and the after effects of channeling alien power. "Why?" the princess asked when she could speak. "Why would you, a human, risk everything for me? Your people and mine have been at war for generations." Kale laughed, a broken sound that echoed in the tunnel. "We're not at war anymore. That's why I'm here. Remember? Peace treaty. Cultural exchange. First contact protocols." He coughed up water. "Though I'm thinking the diplomatic mission didn't go as planned. They used you," she said. "Not an accusation, just a fact. The Ascendancy Council knew a human diplomat would be granted access. Knew you'd present the ceremonial wine. Knew I'd drink it to honor the treaty. Yeah, I figured that out when you were dying in my arms." He sat up, every movement painful. His shoulder where he'd been shot was burned and bleeding, and he could see bone through the charred flesh. "We're trapped under your palace. Half your guards want you dead. And I'm pretty sure I'm going into shock." The princess studied him with those enormous eyes, and Kale felt her mind brush against his again. Lighter this time, more careful. She was reading him, learning him, understanding him in ways that went beyond language. "Now," she said slowly, "we survive. Together. Because the conspiracy that wants me dead isn't just about succession or politics. It's about preventing something." Her hand found his undamaged shoulder, squeezed gently. "The Ascendancy fears human contact. Not because your people are weak, but because you're catalysts. Your biology does impossible things when combined with ours. You just proved it by filtering poison that should have killed us both and channeling energy that should have burned you to ash." Kale's mind raced despite the exhaustion. "They knew this would happen? That touching you would save your life? No. They suspected humans might be compatible, might unlock potential in my species that's been dormant for millennia. That's why they wanted to eliminate me before any real contact happened. But they didn't know it would work this fast. This, completely." She smiled. "And it was fierce. You've just become the most dangerous person in 2 galaxies. Human. Because you and I together are proof that our species can merge, can share power, can become something neither of us could be alone." The walkway shuddered. Somewhere above, more explosions. The conspirators were thorough, destroying evidence, collapsing tunnels, making sure no one survived to tell what had really happened. Kale stood on shaking legs. "Then I guess we'd better get out of here and ruin their whole conspiracy." The princess rose beside him, her skin beginning to glow again with recovered strength. "I don't even know your name, human." "Kale. Kale Morrison. Junior diplomat, 3rd class. And your princess." He realized with embarrassment that he'd never learned to pronounce her name properly. The briefing materials had included a phonetic guide he'd failed to memorize. "Zephyria," she said. And hearing her speak, it made his earlier attempts seem laughably inadequate. Daughter of the Star Court, keeper of the Second Dawn, and apparently the survivor of a very elaborate assassination attempt. She held out her hand, the same one that had touched his, and started this whole impossible chain of events. "Shall we?" Kale took her hand, and the connection flared to life again. Less violent this time, but just as profound. They moved through the tunnels together, and he realized she was drawing a map in his mind, showing him the palace's hidden geography. She knew these passages, had explored them as a child, when the throne had felt like a prison. "There's an exit," she said, both aloud and mentally. 3 levels down, past the old treasury. But it'll be guarded now. They'll know we survived, and they'll be waiting." "How many conspirators are we talking about?" Kale asked, though part of him didn't want to know. 40% of the palace guard. Half the advisory council. Unknown elements in the military. She didn't sugarcoat it. "This isn't a coup attempt, Kale. It's a systematic purge designed to look like diplomatic chaos. They'll blame humans, blame the treaty, restart the war. The implications hit him like a physical blow. His ship, the diplomatic vessel that had brought him here, was in orbit above the palace. His crew, Ambassador Chen, the cultural attaché who'd spent 3 months teaching him basic etiquette, all of them potential targets if the conspiracy needed human casualties to justify renewed hostilities. "We have to warn them," he said. "We will. First, we survive." Zephyria stopped at an intersection of tunnels, head tilted, listening to something he couldn't hear. Movement. Ahead and behind. They're sealing the escape routes. KL felt the fear trying to crush him. But alongside it was something new. The connection to Zephyria. The alien power still singing faintly in his veins. A clarity of purpose he'd never experienced. He'd come here to be a symbol, a handshake, a footnote in a peace treaty. Now he was something else entirely. "Can you fight?" he asked. "I mean really fight. Not just shields and intimidation?" Her smile was predatory. "My species doesn't have a warrior class, Kale. We are the warrior class. Every one of us is trained from childhood to defend the bloodline." She flexed her fingers, and energy crackled between them. "But I've never fought while bonded to a human before. I don't know what we're capable of together. Only one way to find out." Kale picked a piece of metal from the debris-strewn floor, tested its weight. Not a great weapon, but better than nothing. "Which way gives us the best chance?" Zephyria pointed deeper into the tunnels, away from the exit. "Counterintuitive. But there's an old command center down there. If it still has power, I can access the palace systems, maybe send a warning to your ship." They ran. The tunnels blurred around them, and Kale realized with shock that he was moving faster than any human should, that Zephyria was somehow sharing her enhanced physiology through their connection. His injured shoulder still screamed with pain, but he could function through it, could push beyond normal limits. The first ambush came at a junction of 3 tunnels. 4 guards, weapons raised, and KL knew these weren't traitors acting on ideology. These were professionals, paid or coerced into murder, and they wouldn't hesitate. Energy bolts lit up the darkness. Zephyria's shield caught 2, deflecting them into the walls. Kyle dove left, rolled, came up throwing his makeshift weapon. It struck one guard's helmet with a crack that echoed like a gunshot, and the man went down hard. 3 left. Zephyria dropped her shield and attacked, a blur of movement that seemed choreographed by violence itself. She was beautiful and terrifying, every strike precise, every movement flowing into the next. One guard fell, then another, and the last one actually dropped his weapon and ran. Kale stayed down, breathing hard, watching her. "Language appreciated but inaccurate," Zephyria said, barely winded. "Hell is reserved for those who fail to protect their charge." She offered him a hand up. "You threw a pipe at an armed guard. That was either very brave or very stupid." "Ender, can't it be both?" He took her hand, let her pull him to his feet. The connection flared again, and for a moment he saw himself through her eyes, saw a human who should have been dead 6 times over, but kept moving anyway. Kept fighting. Kept choosing to help her, despite every logical reason to run. She thought he was magnificent. The realization almost made him laugh, because he'd never felt less magnificent in his life. They reached the command center, and it was worse than Zephyria had hoped. The room had been thoroughly sabotaged, consoles smashed, wiring ripped out, but she moved through the wreckage with purpose. Found a manual interface buried under debris. "I can get a message out," she said, fingers flying over the controls. "But it'll take time, and it'll broadcast our location to everyone in the palace. Do it." Kale positioned himself at the door, watching the tunnel. "I'll buy you whatever time you need, Kale." Her voice was soft, uncertain. "If we don't survive this, I want you to know that saving me was the worst possible thing for your species' diplomatic relations." He glanced back at her. Why? Because now the Ascendancy can't kill me without proving the conspiracy exists. And they can't let me live, because I'm proof that human-alien bonding works. She smiled, sadly. We've made ourselves into a problem that can only be solved by revealing the truth or starting a war. Then I guess we'd better survive, Kael said, and make sure the truth gets out. The console beeped. Zephyria's eyes widened. Message away. And the response is, your ship is already under attack. The conspirators moved. The moment we fell through the floor, Kael's blood turned to ice. His crew. His friends. The ambassador who'd trusted him with this mission. All of them under fire because he'd touched a dying princess and saved her life. There's more, Zephyria said, her voice tight. Your ship's captain sent a distress signal before comms went down. The human fleet is moving to investigate. That's good, right? That's war, Kael. That's exactly what the conspirators wanted. Human ships approaching in force. My people's defense fleet engaging. Both sides thinking they're responding to aggression. The tunnel erupted with weapons fire. They were out of time, out of options, and out of miracles. But as Kael turned to face the oncoming guards, he felt Zephyria's hand find his one more time, and the power that flowed between them was no longer tentative or experimental. It was fusion. Two species, two biologies, two desperate people, creating something unprecedented in the gap between heartbeats. Kael's body blazed with light he shouldn't have been able to generate, and Zephyria moved with human adaptability her species had never possessed. Together, they were neither human nor alien. They were what came next. The guards froze, weapons lowering despite themselves, because what stood before them wasn't something their training had prepared them to fight. It was evolution, acceleration. The future crashing into the present with catastrophic force. Stand down, Zephyria commanded, and her voice carried harmonics that only a bonded human-alien pair could generate. I am Princess Zephyria, and this is Ambassador Kael Morrison, and we are ordering you to cease fire immediately. For one crystalline moment, Kael thought it would work. Thought the sheer impossibility of their existence would be enough to break the conspiracy's hold on the guards' loyalty. But then someone in the back raised a weapon anyway, and all hell broke loose for the second time that hour. The fight was brutal and fast. Kael moved through it like he was dreaming, his body doing things it shouldn't. Guided by Zephyria's combat instincts, filtering through their bond. He disarmed one guard, disabled another, his human unpredictability making their shots go wide. Zephyria was a storm, her shields flashing into existence and dissolving at thought speed. Her strikes, surgical and devastating. Together they cleared the tunnel in under a minute. Left guards unconscious but alive, because killing would only feed the conspiracy's narrative. The throne room, Zephyria gasped, leaning on him. The fight had cost her. Cost them both. We need to get back there. Need to show the palace that we survived. That the assassination failed. Can we even get there? Kael asked. Every tunnel's probably rigged to collapse now. She smiled grimly. Not every tunnel. There's one path they wouldn't dare destroy, because it would bring down the entire palace. She pulled him toward a side passage, marked with symbols he couldn't read. The royal bloodline's evacuation route. It's shielded, reinforced, and leads directly behind the throne. And, lo, they ran again, and this time Kael felt the palace shaking above them, felt the weight of conspiracies and ancient grudges, trying to crush them beneath stone and steel. But they kept moving, kept believing they could reach the surface, kept hoping that stopping one assassination would be enough to prevent a war. The evacuation tunnel opened into a chamber Kael recognized from his briefing materials. The Hall of Ancestors, where previous rulers were memorialized in crystalline stasis. It was supposed to be sacred, inviolable, a place of peace. It was full of armed conspirators. The leader stood before the throne, a figure Kael recognized with sinking dread. High Chancellor Mordran, the very official who'd welcomed him to the palace. who'd helped arrange the diplomatic meeting. The man who'd handed Kale the poisoned wine and asked him to present it as a gesture of peace. "Princess," Mordran said, and his voice dripped with false sorrow. "I had hoped you would stay dead. It would have been kinder." "Kinder than what?" Zephyria demanded, her hand still locked with Kale's. "Then revealing you're a traitor? Then exposing this conspiracy? Then watching your species become human playthings," Mordran said coldly. "You don't understand what you've done. Bonding with him. You've opened a door that can't be closed. Within a generation, humans and our people will be inseparable. Our genetic lines contaminated. Our culture consumed." "That's not contamination," Kale said, finding his voice. "That's evolution. That's growth. That's what species do when they meet as equals." Mordran's weapon rose, aimed at Kale's heart. "Equals. As if humans could ever be equal to us." His finger tightened on the trigger. "This is the price of idealism. Princess, watch your human die, and know that his death starts the war that will consume both your species." Kyle felt Zephyria's grief spike through their bond, felt her preparing to throw herself in front of him, and he realized with perfect clarity that she would die to save him, just as he'd been willing to die to save her. That was the bond, the connection, the thing the conspiracy feared most. Not weakness, not submission, but a willingness to sacrifice everything for someone different from yourself. The throne room doors exploded inward. Not from internal charges this time, but from external force. Human Marines poured through, weapons raised, and leading them was Ambassador Chen, her face carved from granite and determination. "Stand down," Chen commanded, her voice carrying authority that made even Mordran hesitate. "By authority of the Human Federation and treaty law, I'm placing everyone in this room under diplomatic protection until this situation is resolved." "You have no authority here," Mordran said, but his weapon lowered slightly. "I have the authority of 3 human warships in orbit and a Galactic Council mandate," Chen said. "I have recordings of your conspiracy, transmitted by Princess Zephyria before her communications were cut, and I have about 6 different ways to make this a very short negotiation if you don't put down that weapon right now." Kale sagged with relief so profound it nearly dropped him. The cavalry had arrived. They'd survived. But Mordran's smile was poison. "You think this ends here? You think one failed assassination changes anything?" John. John. John." He gestured to the guards surrounding them. "Half this palace is loyal to the old ways. We won't let humans contaminate our people." "Then you're fools," Zephyria said. And she stepped forward, pulling Kale with her. "Because the contamination, as you call it, has already happened. Kale and I bonded to save my life, and in doing so, we proved what you feared most. That humans and my people are compatible, that we can share strength, share power, become something greater together." She raised their joined hands, and the energy that flowed between them made the air shimmer. "This is the future, Chancellor. Not war, not isolation. Partnership. Evolution. The choice is yours. Embrace it, or be left behind by it." Silence fell over the throne room. Kale felt every eye on them, felt the weight of 2 species' futures balanced on this moment, felt Zephyria's heart beating in sync with his, their biology finding harmony in the space between heartbeats. Mordran lowered his weapon, not in surrender, but in something like resignation. "You've doomed us all," he said quietly, "but I suppose history will decide whether that's tragedy or triumph." Ambassador Chen moved forward, Marines flanking her. "High Chancellor Mordran, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted assassination of a foreign dignitary, and inciting interstellar conflict. You'll be tried under Galactic Council law." As the Marines took Mordran into custody, Kale felt the adrenaline draining from his system, leaving exhaustion and pain in its wake. His shoulder was agony, His body was pushed beyond its limits, and he was pretty sure he'd broken at least 3 fingers during the fight in the tunnels. But Zephyria was alive. The conspiracy was exposed, and somehow, impossibly, they'd prevented a war. KL, Zephyria said softly, and he realized she was still holding his hand. The bond. It's not temporary. He looked at her, saw the uncertainty in those enormous eyes. What do you mean? I mean that what we did, channeling power, sharing biology, merging consciousness, it's permanent. We're linked now, for life. I should have told you before, should have warned you, but there wasn't time. Kale processed this. Processed the implications of being permanently connected to an alien princess. Processed the diplomatic nightmares, the political complications, the sheer impossibility of maintaining a normal life when part of your consciousness would always be shared with someone from another species. Then he laughed, couldn't help it. The situation was so absurd, so completely beyond anything his diplomatic training had prepared him for, that laughter was the only sane response. Permanent, he said. Well, I guess that makes the whole preventing a war thing easier. Pretty hard to mistrust a species when their representative is literally bonded to your princess. Zephyria's relief was palpable. You're not angry? I'm terrified, Kale admitted. But I'd rather be terrified and bonded to you than dead. So yeah, I think we can make this work. He squeezed her hand gently. 7. Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't get poisoned again. Ambassador Chen approached, her expression softening slightly. Mr. Morrison. Princess Zephyria. I believe we have a great deal to discuss about the future of human-alien relations. But first. She gestured to a medical team waiting at the entrance. Let's get you both treated. You look like hell. Funny. Kale said, echoing Zephyria's earlier words. Hell is reserved for those who fail to protect their charge. I'd say we're doing pretty well. The medical team swarmed them, separating their hands for the first time in what felt like hours. The moment the connection broke, Kale felt an emptiness he hadn't expected. A sense of loss that was almost physical. He looked at Zephyria and saw the same emotion reflected in her eyes. They'd saved each other's lives. Stopped a conspiracy. Prevented a war. And in the process, they'd become something unprecedented in galactic history. A human and an alien, bonded at the deepest biological level, living proof that cooperation between species wasn't just possible, but inevitable. As the medical team worked on his shoulder, Kale watched Zephyria being treated across the room. Even separated, he could feel her presence at the edge of his consciousness, a warmth that hadn't been there before. The bond was real, permanent, and utterly terrifying in its implications. But it was also beautiful, a connection that transcended species, culture, biology itself. A bridge between worlds built from desperation and compassion, and the simple choice to help someone who needed it. The conspiracy had feared this, had tried to prevent it by killing Zephyria before any real human contact could occur. They'd understood, perhaps better than anyone, that genuine connection between species would make war impossible. How could you hate someone when you carried part of them inside your mind? Ambassador, Kale called to Chen. What happens now? With the conspiracy exposed? With Mordrin arrested? Chen's expression was grave. Now comes the hard part. Rebuilding trust. Convincing both our species that cooperation is possible. Dealing with those who still believe isolation is safer than integration. She glanced at Zephyria. The princess's survival changes everything. She's proof that the conspiracy exists, but also proof that what they feared is real. Humans and her people can bond, can merge. That's going to terrify a lot of individuals on both sides. Good, Zephyria said, her voice carrying across the room. Let them be terrified. Fear is honest, at least. Fear can be reasoned with, negotiated with. Hatred is harder to fight. She met Kale's eyes. But we're proof that even fear can be overcome when the alternative is death. Body CP. Lime. The medical team finished with Kale's shoulder, wrapping it in regenerative bandages that tingled against his skin. He stood carefully, testing his balance, and found that despite everything, he could still move, could still function. The human body was remarkably resilient when it had to be. Zephyria approached, her movement still carrying that alien grace that had first captivated him during the diplomatic ceremony. Had that really been only hours ago? It felt like a lifetime had passed since he'd offered her the poisoned wine. "Your thoughts are loud," she said with a slight smile. "I can feel your guilt about the poison. Stop it. You didn't know." "I should have," Kale said. "Should have questioned why they gave me the wine instead of having it presented by their own people. Should have suspected something when Mordrin was so insistent that I be the one to offer it." "Du fro trong. Hindsight is perfect vision," Zephyria said. "You acted with honor. That's all anyone can do." She held out her hand. "Shall we face the council together? They'll want explanations. And I'd rather not do this alone." Kael took her hand, and the bond flared to life again, warm and reassuring. Together, they followed Ambassador Chen out of the throne room and into a future neither of them had planned for. A future where a human diplomat and an alien princess were permanently linked, living symbols of what cooperation between species could achieve. The council chambers were packed. Representatives from both human and alien delegations, military advisors, cultural attachés, all of them demanding answers. Kale felt Zephyria's nervousness through the bond, felt her steeling herself for interrogation and accusation, but he also felt her resolve. She was a princess, trained from birth for leadership, and she wouldn't let fear dictate her actions now, not when so much was at stake. The questioning lasted hours. Kael and Zephyria answered every question, explained the bond in as much detail as they understood, described the conspiracy and the assassination attempt. Ambassador Chen provided corroborating evidence, recordings and data that proved Mordrin's guilt beyond doubt. Slowly, grudgingly, the council began to accept the truth. That humans and aliens could coexist, could bond, could become partners rather than enemies. It wasn't unanimous. There were still voices calling for isolation, still those who believed the conspiracy had been right to fear human influence. But the majority understood what Kale and Zephyria represented. Hope. Possibility. A future where war wasn't inevitable, where cooperation could lead to something greater than either species could achieve alone. As the council session finally ended, Kale felt exhaustion crashing over him like a wave. He'd been awake for over 30 hours, had nearly died multiple times, had channeled alien power through a body that wasn't designed for it. He needed sleep, needed food, needed about 6 months of physical therapy. But first, there was one more thing he had to do. "Zephyria," he said quietly as they left the council chambers. "I need to see my crew. The ones who were on the ship when it was attacked. I need to know they're okay." Her understanding flowed through the bond before she spoke. "Of course. I'll come with you." They found the survivors in the medical wing, being treated for various injuries sustained during the attack on their ship. 3 dead, 7 wounded. But the rest had survived thanks to Ambassador Chen's quick action in getting human warships to respond. Captain Rodriguez saw Kale first, his scarred face splitting into a grin despite the bandages covering half his torso. "Morrison, you crazy son of a gun. You actually did it. Actually stopped a war by touching a princess." Kale laughed, despite everything. "That's the worst possible summary of events, Captain. But accurate?" Rodriguez's eyes shifted to Zephyria, and his expression grew serious. "Your Highness, I understand you and Mr. Morrison are now, connected? Bonded." Zephyria corrected gently. "Yes. Permanently. I hope that won't complicate diplomatic relations further." Rodriguez shook his head. "Complications are what diplomats are for. Me? I'm just glad someone stopped this thing before it turned into a full shooting war. He extended his hand to her, and, after a moment's hesitation, she shook it. Welcome to the Human Diplomatic Corps, Princess. Weird as that sounds. Kyle felt Zephyria's amusement through the bond. I believe the proper response is thank you? It is, Kale confirmed. Captain, what's the status on the ship? Rodriguez's expression darkened. Salvageable. But it'll be in dock for months. The conspirators hit us hard. Targeted our weapons and engines specifically. They wanted us disabled, not destroyed. Probably planning to use us as hostages if the assassination failed. Kale felt cold certainty settle in his gut. They had contingencies, multiple layers. If Zephyria died, they'd blame humans and restart the war. If she survived, they'd take hostages and force a confrontation anyway. But they didn't count on you two bonding, Rodriguez said. Didn't count on you becoming living proof that cooperation works. That's what broke their strategy. That and Ambassador Chen bringing 3 warships, Kale said wryly. Details. Rodriguez waved a hand dismissively. Point is, you two saved a lot of lives today. Both species owe you. Ninth, the weight of that settled on Kale's shoulders. Debt. Obligation. Expectation. He'd come here as a junior diplomat. Barely qualified for ceremonial duties. And now he was bonded to an alien princess. And responsible for the future of 2 species. Through the bond, he felt Zephyria's quiet laughter. She said, together. That's what the bond means. We don't face these burdens alone anymore. We don't face these burdens alone anymore. We don't face these burdens alone. We don't face these burdens alone. KL squeezed her hand. Yeah. They left the medical wing as evening fell over the alien city. The palace had been secured. The conspirators rounded up. The immediate crisis resolved. But Kale knew this was only the beginning. There would be trials, negotiations, endless political maneuvering, as both species tried to figure out what human-alien bonding meant for their future. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, he and Zephyria stood on a balcony overlooking the city, watching twin moons rise over an alien horizon, and Kale felt something like peace settling into his bones. Thank you, Zephyria said quietly, for saving my life, for not running when things got complicated, for staying even when you learned the bond was permanent. Thank you, Kale countered, for not dying when I touched you, for sharing your power when those guards attacked, for trusting a human when everything in your training said you shouldn't. She smiled. And in that moment, Kyle saw her not as an alien princess, but as a person. Someone who'd been scared and brave and desperate to do the right thing, just like him. Someone who'd chosen partnership over isolation, trust over fear. The bond hummed between them, warm and alive. And Kale knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. Human and alien. Diplomat and princess. 2 people who'd saved each other's lives and, in doing so, had changed the course of galactic history. So, Kale said, breaking the comfortable silence. I don't suppose there's a manual for this? Bonding etiquette? Things I should know about being permanently connected to alien royalty? Zephyria's laughter was like music. If there is, no one told me about it. I suppose we'll have to write our own rules. Great, Kale said, because I'm really good at improvising under pressure. I noticed, Zephyria said dryly, throwing pipes at armed guards. Very diplomatic. It worked, didn't it? Somehow, yes. She turned to face him fully, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. Kale Morrison, Junior Diplomat 3rd Class. I think this is the beginning of something unprecedented. Kale thought about everything they'd been through. The assassination attempt, the fighting, the desperate run through collapsing tunnels. The moment when he'd touched her hand, and everything had changed. The choice he'd made without thinking, to save her life even if it cost his own. Yeah, he said. I think you're right. The future stretched before them, uncertain and dangerous and full of potential. Two species learning to coexist. A conspiracy, exposed, but not destroyed. Political pressures and cultural differences and 1,000 complications neither of them could predict. But they had something the conspiracy didn't. Something powerful enough to bridge the gap between worlds, to turn enemies into allies, to prove that cooperation was possible. They had each other. And that, Kale was beginning to realize, might be enough to change everything.